4 psychological glitches that prove your brain is broken. Your brain just glitched. Right now. This second. And you didn't even notice. It happens constantly. Dozens of times a day. Your perception skips. Your memory fabricates. Your sense of reality fractures for a microsecond, then smooths itself over before you can catch it. Your brain is lying to you, and it's so good at lying that you believe every word. We like to think our brains are sophisticated computers, processing reality accurately and storing memories faithfully. But the truth is far more disturbing. Your brain is a broken, glitchy mess held together with duct tape and wishful thinking. It makes constant errors. It fabricates memories. It creates false feelings of familiarity and unfamiliarity at random. And worst of all, it convinces you that everything is working perfectly. Today, we're diving into 4 psychological glitches that everyone experiences but almost nobody understands. These aren't rare mental illnesses. These aren't disorders you need to worry about. These are fundamental bugs in the operating system of human consciousness. Features, not flaws. Ways your brain breaks that reveal just how fragile your grip on reality actually is. First, we'll explore déjà vu, that eerie feeling that you've lived this exact moment before, and why it proves your brain fabricates familiarity out of nothing. Then we'll experience jamais vu, the opposite glitch where familiar things suddenly become alien and wrong. Third, we'll uncover cryptomnesia, where you steal other people's memories without knowing it and genuinely believe they're yours. And finally, we'll end with depersonalization, the most disturbing glitch of all, where you become a spectator watching your own life from outside your body. By the end of this video, you'll never trust your brain again. You'll question every memory, every feeling of familiarity, every moment of consciousness. Because once you see these glitches, you can't unsee them. And you might start noticing them happening to you. Right now. Let's begin with the glitch you've definitely experienced. The one that makes you feel like you're living in a simulation. Let's talk about Déjà Vu Chapter 1, Deal with Grave VU, the familiarity glitch when your brain recognizes something that never happened. You're sitting in a room you've never been in before, talking to someone you just met. The conversation is mundane, normal, nothing special. And then it hits you. A wave of impossible familiarity washes over you. You've been here before. You've had this exact conversation. You've heard these exact words in this exact room with this exact person. Not something similar. Not reminiscent. Exactly this. Every detail matches a memory you somehow have. But that's impossible. You know it's impossible. You've never been here. You've never met this person. This conversation is happening for the first time. Yet the feeling persists. Undeniable. Overwhelming. A certainty that clashes with logic. Your brain is telling you 2 contradictory things simultaneously. This is new, and this has happened before. Both feel absolutely true. This is déjà vu, French for already seen. And you've experienced it. Everyone has. That sudden, jarring sensation that reality is repeating itself. That you're living through a moment you've already lived through. That time is looping. That maybe, just maybe, you're seeing a glitch in the matrix. The term was coined by French philosopher Émile Boirac in 1876, but humans have been experiencing this glitch for as long as we've had consciousness. Ancient Greeks thought it was a message from the gods. Medieval Europeans thought it was demonic influence. Modern people think it's evidence we're in a simulation. But the truth is stranger. And more disturbing. Déjà vu happens when your brain's memory systems misfire. When the part of your brain responsible for creating memories accidentally labels a new experience as familiar. It's a tagging error. Your brain is experiencing something for the first time but files it in the "I've seen this before" folder by mistake. And here's what makes this truly unsettling. It proves your feeling of familiarity is completely fabricated. It's not based on actual past experience. It's just a neurochemical signal your brain generates. A label it slaps on experiences. And sometimes, that label gets attached to the wrong experience. Think about what this means. Every time you recognize something, a face, a place, a song, that feeling of "I know this" isn't actually you remembering. It's your brain generating a familiarity signal. And that signal can be generated incorrectly. At random. For no reason. Your sense of recognition is a lie your brain tells you. And sometimes, it tells you that lie about things you've never actually experienced. Scientists have several theories about why déjà vu happens. None of them are completely proven. All of them are disturbing in their own way. The dual processing theory suggests that déjà vu occurs when there's a slight delay between perceiving something and consciously processing it. Your brain perceives an event, and a fraction of a second later, processes it consciously. But that tiny delay makes your conscious mind think it's experiencing something it already perceived moments ago. Essentially, your brain is running so slowly that it tricks itself into thinking the present is the past. The hologram theory is even weirder. It suggests that memories are stored as fragments throughout your brain, like pieces of a hologram. When something in your current experience matches one tiny fragment, maybe the lighting in a room or the tone of someone's voice, your brain accidentally activates the entire hologram, flooding you with false familiarity. You're not remembering the actual situation. You're experiencing a memory hallucination triggered by a single matching detail. The memory encoding error theory suggests that sometimes, brand new memories get filed as old memories during the encoding process. The experience is happening right now, but your brain is simultaneously storing it as if it already happened in the past. So you're literally remembering the present as you experience it. Time becomes meaningless. Past and present collapse into the same moment. But here's what all these theories have in common. They prove your brain can't be trusted. If your brain can generate false familiarity for brand new experiences, then how do you know your real memories are real? How do you know that childhood memory you treasure isn't just your brain generating a familiarity signal for something that never happened? You don't. You can't. Memory feels the same whether it's real or fabricated. There's no way to tell the difference from the inside. Most déjà vu episodes last only seconds. Brief, disorienting moments that fade quickly. But some people experience chronic déjà vu, constant, unrelenting feelings of false familiarity that never stop. Every moment feels like a repetition. Every conversation feels like it's happened before. Reality becomes a loop they can't escape. There's a documented case of a 23-year-old British man who developed chronic déjà vu after taking LSD. 4 years afterward, every single experience felt familiar. He stopped watching TV because every show felt like a rerun. He stopped listening to music because every song felt like he'd heard it 1,000 times. He avoided new experiences because they didn't feel new. They all felt like repetitions of things he'd already done. His brain's familiarity system was permanently broken. Stuck in the on position. Generating false recognition signals constantly, uncontrollably. He was trapped in a world where nothing could ever be new again. That's the horror of déjà vu. Not the brief episodes everyone experiences, but what they reveal. Your sense of familiarity is arbitrary. Your brain can make anything feel familiar or unfamiliar at will. Your recognition of reality is not reliable. And here's something that will make you uncomfortable. Déjà vu happens more frequently when you're tired, stressed, or anxious. When your brain is working harder to process reality, it makes more errors. More mislabeling. More false familiarity. Which means the worse your mental state, the less you can trust your perception of reality. When you most need your brain to work correctly, it's most likely to glitch. Studies show that people between 15 and 25 experience déjà vu most frequently. Young brains, still developing, still calibrating their memory systems. Making more mistakes. More glitches. But everyone experiences it. About 60 to 70% of people report having had at least one déjà vu experience. Which means this glitch is not rare. It's not abnormal. It's standard operating procedure for human consciousness. Your brain is supposed to glitch like this. This is how it normally functions. There's also a related phenomenon called déjà vécu, already lived. It's more intense than déjà vu. With déjà vécu, you don't just feel like you've seen something before. You feel like you've lived through this entire sequence of events. You know what's going to happen next. You feel like you're watching a movie you've already seen, and you're waiting for the scenes to play out exactly as you remember them. Except you don't actually remember them. Your brain is fabricating the feeling of precognition in real time, making you believe you predicted something you couldn't possibly have known. Some people mistake this for proof of psychic abilities, past lives, or living in a simulation. But it's much simpler and much more disturbing. Your brain is lying about temporal sequence. Rewriting cause and effect. Making you believe you knew something before you could have known it. So every time you experience déjà vu, remember what it actually is. Proof that your brain fabricates familiarity. Proof that your sense of recognition is unreliable. Proof that you can't trust your own perception of whether something is new or repeated. And if your brain can make new things feel old, Can it do the opposite? Can it make familiar things feel completely alien? Can it take something you've known your entire life and strip away all recognition, leaving you staring at a stranger? Yes. And it's even more disturbing than déjà vu. Because while déjà vu makes the unfamiliar feel safe, the opposite glitch, jamais vu, makes the familiar feel terrifying. Let's talk about jamais vu Chapter 2, jamais vu, the unfamiliarity glitch when familiar things suddenly become alien. You're writing an email. Typing a word you've typed thousands of times. A simple, common word. Te. And suddenly, it looks wrong. Not misspelled. Not grammatically incorrect. Just wrong. Alien. Like you're seeing it for the first time. The letters don't make sense together. The word feels meaningless. Foreign. Like it's from a language you don't speak. You stare at it. Te. 3 letters. How can 3 letters suddenly feel incomprehensible? You delete it. Type it again. Still wrong. Still alien. Your brain refuses to recognize this word you've known since childhood. This is jamais vu, French for never seen. The opposite of déjà vu. Where déjà vu creates false familiarity, jamais vu destroys real familiarity. It's your brain suddenly refusing to recognize something it should absolutely recognize. And it's one of the most unsettling glitches you can experience. Jamais vu happens when your brain's recognition systems temporarily fail. The neural pathways that create feelings of familiarity shut down. Something you know intimately, a word, a face, a place, suddenly loses all meaning. All context. All connection to your previous experience. It's like meeting a stranger who happens to look exactly like your best friend. All the information is there. All the details are correct. But the feeling of recognition is completely absent. The most common form is semantic satiation. Here's how you trigger it deliberately. Pick a word. Any word. Say it out loud. Repeat it. Again and again and again. Door. 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 After about 30 seconds of repetition, something breaks. The word stops sounding like a word. It becomes just noise. Meaningless syllables. Your brain can no longer connect the sound to the meaning. The recognition pathway overloads and temporarily shuts down. You've severed the link between symbol and meaning. And for a moment, language itself becomes incomprehensible. This happens because of neural adaptation. When you repeat something too many times, the neurons responsible for processing that specific stimulus become fatigued. They stop firing. Your brain essentially says, I've processed this enough. I'm going to stop paying attention now. But without those neurons firing, you lose the ability to recognize what you're looking at. The familiar becomes unfamiliar. The known becomes unknown. Now imagine this happening not with words, but with faces. There's an experiment you can do right now. I don't recommend it, but you can do it. Go to a mirror. Look at your own face. Really look at it. Stare into your own eyes without looking away. Don't blink more than necessary. Don't let your gaze wander. Just stare at yourself for 2 to 3 minutes straight. After about 90 seconds, something disturbing starts to happen. Your face starts to look wrong. Unfamiliar. The person staring back at you doesn't look like you anymore. The features distort. Not physically, they're the same. But perceptually. Your brain stops recognizing the face as your own. You're looking at a stranger. A stranger with your exact features. Someone who mimics your movements perfectly. But they're not you. They can't be you. Because you don't recognize them. This is called the strange face illusion, discovered by psychologist Giovanni Caputo. In studies, 90% of participants reported seeing distortions when staring at their own reflection. Some saw monstrous faces. Others saw their faces aging rapidly. Some saw their features melting. And many simply stopped recognizing themselves entirely. Your own face became a stranger's face. This happens because of the same neural fatigue that causes semantic satiation. When you stare at your face without moving your eyes, the neurons responsible for facial recognition become exhausted. They stop processing. And without those neurons firing, your brain can't identify the face as yours. Your sense of self is so dependent on neural activity that when those specific neurons shut down, you literally don't recognize your own face. But it gets worse. Much worse. Jemai's vu doesn't just affect words and faces in mirrors. It can affect anything. Any familiar stimulus can suddenly become unfamiliar if your recognition systems glitch. People have reported driving home from work, a route they've taken thousands of times, and suddenly not recognizing where they are. The street looks foreign. The buildings look wrong. They know intellectually that this is their neighborhood, but emotionally, perceptually, it feels like they've never been here before. Others have reported looking at their spouse of 20 years and feeling like they're looking at a stranger. Not emotionally, they still love them. But the feeling of familiarity is gone. They're staring at someone they know intimately but don't recognize. There's even a severe, chronic version of this called Capgras delusion. Capgras delusion is a rare psychiatric disorder where people become convinced that someone close to them, usually a spouse or family member, has been replaced by an identical imposter. The person looks the same, sounds the same, knows everything the real person would know. But they're not real. They're fake. A replacement. A copy. This happens because of brain damage that severs the connection between facial recognition and emotional response. Patients can recognize faces intellectually. They know this looks like their wife, but the emotional feeling of familiarity is completely absent. And humans are so dependent on that feeling of familiarity that when it's absent, we assume the person must be fake. Because the real person would feel familiar. This stranger wearing my wife's face doesn't feel familiar. Therefore, they must be an imposter. Logic says, this is my wife. Emotion says, this is a stranger. And emotion wins. Because our sense of reality is based more on feeling than fact. Capgras patients aren't delusional in the traditional sense. They're experiencing exactly what their broken brain is telling them to experience. If your brain stops generating familiarity signals for your spouse's face, then yes, your spouse will feel like an imposter. That's the logical conclusion given the sensory data. The delusion isn't that they think it's an imposter. The delusion is that there ever was such a thing as recognition to begin with. Because recognition is just a feeling your brain generates. A label. A neurochemical signal. It's not based on objective reality. It's based on whether specific neurons fire when you encounter a stimulus. And if those neurons don't fire, because of fatigue, damage, or random glitching, then familiarity disappears. Reality becomes alien. The known becomes unknown. Here's an uncomfortable thought. How often does mild Jemai's vu happen without you noticing? Maybe you've looked at a word and felt like it was misspelled when it wasn't. Maybe you've heard your own voice in a recording and thought it sounded wrong. Maybe you've looked at a childhood photo and felt disconnected from the person in it, like it's someone else entirely. That's Jemai's vu, brief, subtle, easy to dismiss. But it's your brain failing to recognize things it should recognize. Small glitches in the recognition system that happen constantly but rarely last long enough to be disturbing. Until they do. Some people experience chronic Jemai's vu as part of anxiety disorders or dissociative disorders. Every day, familiar things feel wrong. Their home doesn't feel like home. Their family doesn't feel familiar. Their own memories feel like stories about someone else. Reality becomes permanently alien. They're strangers in their own life. So here's what Jemai's vu teaches us. Familiarity is not real. It's not based on actual previous experience. It's just a feeling your brain generates, and that feeling can be turned off at any moment. You think you know your own face, your own home, your own life. But you don't. You just have a brain that generates familiarity signals when you encounter those things. And if that brain stops generating those signals, even for a moment, everything you know becomes alien. The familiar and the unfamiliar are not properties of reality. They're properties of your neural activity. And neural activity is unreliable. But there's an even more disturbing glitch. One that doesn't just make familiar things feel unfamiliar. One that makes you steal other people's memories and genuinely believe they're yours. One that proves most of your past is probably fiction. Let's talk about cryptomnesia. Chapter 3. So, when you steal memories without knowing it, you're telling a story from your childhood. A funny anecdote about something that happened to you when you were 7. You remember it clearly. The details are vivid. You can picture exactly where you were, what you were wearing, how it felt. It's a good story. People laugh. They relate. They share their own childhood stories in response. 6 months later, your sister mentions that exact story. But in her version, it happened to her, not you. She remembers it happening to her when she was 7. Same details. Same location. Same vivid memory. One of you is wrong. One of you has a completely false memory. One of you is remembering something that happened to someone else and claiming it as their own experience. This is cryptomnesia. Hidden memory. Unconscious plagiarism. The theft of experiences, ideas, and memories without any awareness that you're stealing. And it happens constantly. Cryptomnesia occurs when your brain stores information about something you heard or read, but forgets the source. Later, when that information surfaces, your brain presents it as an original thought or personal memory. You genuinely believe you came up with the idea, or that the experience happened to you, because your brain has no record of where the information actually came from. You're not lying. You're not consciously stealing. You truly believe the memory or idea is yours, because your brain has labeled it as yours. Filed it in the personal experience folder even though it belongs in the things I heard about folder. This is different from simply forgetting where you heard something. This is your brain actively rewriting history. Reattributing someone else's experience as your own. Taking someone else's thought and claiming it as your original creation. And you'll never know unless someone calls you out on it. The most famous documented case of cryptomnesia involves George Harrison and his song My Sweet Lord. In 1970, Harrison released My Sweet Lord, which became a massive hit. But there was a problem. The melody was nearly identical to his So Fine, a 1963 hit by the Chiffons. Harrison was sued for copyright infringement. In court, Harrison insisted he'd never consciously copied the song. He genuinely believed he'd written an original melody. The judge ruled against him anyway, but acknowledged that Harrison had likely committed subconscious copying. He'd heard his So Fine years earlier, forgotten about it, and then unknowingly recreated the melody, believing it was his own original creation. Cryptomnesia. Harrison stole a melody without knowing he stole it. His brain presented it as original when it wasn't. But musical plagiarism is just the obvious example. The real horror of cryptomnesia is what it reveals about memory itself. Because if your brain can take someone else's experience and file it as your own memory, then how many of your memories are actually yours? Think about your childhood memories. The stories you tell about your past. The experiences that shaped who you are. How many of them did you actually experience yourself? And how many did you hear about from family members and later internalize as personal memories? Research shows that people frequently incorporate stories they've been told into their own memory banks. A parent tells you a story about something you did when you were 3. You hear that story multiple times throughout your childhood. Eventually, you develop a vivid memory of the event. You can picture it. You can feel it. You remember being there. But you don't. You remember the story. Your brain has created a false memory based on the narrative you've been told, and filed it as a real memory. You're remembering something that never happened to you, even though it might have actually happened. Psychologist Jean Piaget, one of the most influential developmental psychologists of the 20th century, had a vivid memory from his childhood. He remembered being in his baby carriage at age 2 when a man attempted to kidnap him. He remembered his nanny fighting off the kidnapper. He remembered the scratches on the nanny's face. He remembered the crowd gathering. The memory was crystal clear. Years later, his nanny confessed. She'd made the whole thing up. The kidnapping never happened. She'd invented the story and told it to the family. Piaget had heard the story so many times that his brain created a false memory of experiencing it. One of the world's foremost experts on child development had a completely fabricated childhood memory and didn't know it until decades later. If Piaget can have false memories, so can you. Here's what makes cryptomnesia truly disturbing. Your brain doesn't distinguish between memories based on real experience and memories based on stories you've heard. They're stored the same way. They feel the same way. There's no internal flag that says this is real versus this is something you heard about. Which means every memory you have is potentially suspect. Every childhood anecdote might be someone else's story that you internalized. Every vivid recollection might be a fabrication based on photos you've seen or tales you've been told. Your past is a narrative your brain has constructed, and that narrative includes plagiarized content you're not aware of. Studies on false memory implantation have proven this experimentally. In one famous study, researchers convinced participants that they'd been lost in a shopping mall as children. They showed them fake evidence, doctored photos, fabricated testimonies from family members. About 25% of participants developed detailed memories of an event that never happened. They remembered being scared. They remembered crying. They remembered what the mall looked like. They remembered being found. All completely false. All created by suggestion and imagination. If psychologists can implant false memories in a lab setting in 25% of people, imagine how often it happens naturally throughout life. Every time someone tells you a story, every time you see a photo, every time you hear a family anecdote, your brain is potentially absorbing that information and repackaging it as personal memory. You're not a person with a coherent past. You're a collection of memories, some real, some heard, some imagined, all blended together into a narrative you call your life. And it's not just personal memories. It's ideas too. How many original thoughts have you had that were actually just recycled ideas you forgot you heard? How many times have you thought you came up with something clever, only to later realize you'd read it somewhere years ago? Writers experience this constantly. They write what they think is an original plot twist, then later discover they subconsciously copied it from a book they read in childhood. They create a character they think is unique, only to realize it's eerily similar to a character from a movie they saw years ago. Cryptomnesia is why originality is so hard. Because your brain is a storage system filled with ideas from thousands of sources, and it's terrible at keeping track of which ideas came from where. Most of what you think is original is actually remixed, recycled, repackaged content from your entire history of media consumption and social interaction. There's even a philosophical problem here. If your memories are a mix of real experiences and absorbed narratives, then what does it mean to be someone? Your identity is based on your past. The person you think you are is shaped by the experiences you remember having. But if those experiences are partially or completely false, if some of them are actually other people's experiences that you've internalized, then who are you really? You're a fiction. A narrative. A story cobbled together from real events, imagined events, and events that happened to other people. There's no authentic you because there's no authentic past to base your identity on. So here's what cryptomnesia teaches us. Memory is not reliable. Your past is not factual. The experiences you think shaped you might not have actually happened to you. And there's no way to know which memories are real and which are stolen or fabricated. Your life story is fan fiction. And you're the most convinced fan of all. But there's one final glitch. One that's more disturbing than all the others combined. One that doesn't just make you question your memories or perceptions, but makes you question whether you exist at all. One that turns you into a spectator watching your own life from outside your body. Let's talk about depersonalization. Chapter 4. Depersonalization. When you stop feeling real, you're standing in your kitchen making coffee. A routine you've done 1,000 times. Muscle memory. Your hands move automatically, grabbing the mug, pouring water, stirring. But something is wrong. You're watching yourself do it. Not experiencing it. You're observing from somewhere outside your body, watching your hands move like they belong to someone else. Like you're controlling a puppet. Like you're a ghost haunting your own life. Your body is moving, but you're not in it. You're somewhere else. Somewhere distant. Watching yourself exist from behind a thick pane of glass. This is depersonalization. The ultimate psychological glitch. The moment when consciousness becomes aware of itself and breaks in the process. When the observer and the observed split apart. When you become a spectator in your own existence. And it's one of the most terrifying experiences a human can have. Depersonalization is a dissociative state where you lose the feeling of being yourself. I'm going to leave you now to think about everything I have said and really understand these concepts.